الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Jameel Mu'mineen wa Mu'minat. First and foremost, I congratulate the Imam of our time, Imam Hajjah Ajal Faraj Sharif, and then all of you on the auspicious occasion which we have come to celebrate, or in fact the two auspicious occasions which we have come to celebrate, and that is the birthday of Imam Ali ibn Muhammad al-Hadi al-Naqi alayhi afdal salatu wasalam, and also the appointment of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi afdal salatu wasalam as the Mawla al-Mu'mineen, the day of Ghadir. And these are two very great occasions. In fact, mashallah, the beautiful poetry that was recited, if we truly paid attention to the meaning, that in itself is enough, is sufficient for a lecture. So many very beautiful points that were pointed out, especially in each of the poems. You know, I really like that point in the early poem that that we are celebrating Imam Ali al-Naqi, and his grandfather is Ali. And so that shows that, again, today that we are celebrating Aliyain, Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam. And also in the Arabic poetry, that in every time you find an Ali and Muawiyah, you find this symbol of justice, and you find injustice as well. This, which we find in the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. As we come today to celebrate these two events, of course, the actual Eid al-Ghadir is on Tuesday, and inshallah we have a program as well that simply will focus on the poetry. It is also a great day of barakah and blessing, as I will point out, inshallah, in this brief lecture this evening. The Eid al-Ghadir is something that we find that all of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wassalam, they celebrated, they emphasized as one of the the statements that we all know of, that is said that Ghadir, or the Yawm al-Ghadir al-Khum, or Eid al-Ghadir, is Eid al-Akbar. It is the great Eid among the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wassalam. But that great Eid as well is different from other Eids, which we'll point out to just very briefly. And what I'm going to do is basically show how Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, he emphasized the blessings, the barakah, the importance of the day of Eid al-Ghadir. As we celebrate his birthday, we see that in his seerah, in his lifetime, he also had a focus and an emphasis on the day of Ghadir, that it should be celebrated, that it should be recognized, that it should not be something that we consider or we just pass it over as any other ordinary day. And there's a great lesson that we can learn from this, and also learn from the Sirat of Ahlul Bayt, Sirat of Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, and that is our deen is our politics. Our spirituality is our politics. In fact, these are two things that should never be separated. And I say so not simply with the idea or concept in mind that, of course, if you study political sciences, there are all these different types of governments. One of those types of governments, they say, is a theocracy. Government that is led by religion or religious figure. But when we look at the Sirat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wassalam from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, all the way to Imam Zaban al-Jufar al-Sharif, that we see that what is studied or examined or how they describe a theocracy is not the leadership of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wassalam, because it's more than simply saying, oh, hey, the government or governance is simply run by religion. No. What they were focused on is not simply religion or what is called religion, but spirituality. They are focused on returning and bringing the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala together in harmony with one another. This is the focus of Ahlul Bayt. This is the focus of their, you could say, religious government or their spiritual government. Not just simply say, oh, well, it's run by the religion, so it's run by the religion, so it's a theocracy. No, it is that governance. In fact, when we look at this definition, we'll get to that. That how is politics defined, at least in our concept, or at least in the concept of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wassalam. So we'll focus on these two things. And the first thing I want to focus on is the idea of the spirituality of the day of Ghadir. As Imam Ali al-Hadi alayhi salatu wassalam, he emphasized, among some of the companions of the Imam, they were kind of debating, they were questioning, and they had heard this idea and this concept, yes, that Ghadir, Yawm al-Ghadir, is the Eid. It is Eid al-Akbar. It is one of the greatest of Eids. And so they were debating about what type of Eid is this, and should we fast or should we not fast? What type of thing should go on? And so when they came to Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, the Imam, he said that this is the 18th of Dhul Hijjah. He says, Yawm al-Ghadir, Yawm al-Nasaba, fihi Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Aliyan Amir al-Mu'mineen. It is the day in which the Prophet, he appointed, or at least he gave a firm and very clear announcement that Imam Ali alayhi salatu that he is the leader of the Ummah. Then he said, it is a day in which one should fast, and if a person fasts in that day, kana kafaratan li-sittina aman. So fasting on the day of Ghadir is equivalent to having a kafara or paying kafara for one's disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 60 years. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. 60 years of kafara by the day fasting only on the day of Eid al-Ghadir. Likewise, when we look at the aspect or that, inshallah, as you see simply from this hadith of Imam Hadi alayhi salatu, right now we're just focusing on the spiritual aspect, but he points out these two things. One is nasab, that the appointment of Amir al-Mu'mineen, which deals with the leadership, politics, but in that appointment as well, on that day, the blessings and the barakah of that day is spiritual. That you fast and you gain the kafara of 60 years of disobedience. When we look at the Mafatih al-Jinan, inshallah, for those who may need the English to refer to, I'm sure if you go to duas.org as well, you'll find the similar thing, the different recommendations for the day of Ghadir. And it's not something that just starts in the evening, no program. From the beginning of that day, the ghusl that you will do, the fasting on that day, the du'as on that day, the ziyarat on that day, the prayer on that day, and in fact that prayer that you do, 2 rakats. 2 rakats that you do on that day. And once you do those 2 rakats, you make a sajda and you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shukran lillah, 100 times. And then you raise your head up from that prayer, and then you begin to make a dua. The dua begins, Allahumma inni as'aluka ba'anna lakal hamd. Again, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this blessing of this day. And then it ends with, وَجَعَلْنَا مَعَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. So Allah, make us be with the Ahlul Bayt in this world and in the Akhirah. وَمِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ. And be among those individuals who are close to the Ahlul Bayt. This is what this dua is. And you recite it just before Zawal, just before the Salat al-Dhuhr. And why do you recite it at that moment? You recite it at that moment because this is the moment in which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he actually raised the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, "Man kuntu mawlahu fahada aliyun mawla." So in that salat, and there's just like any salat, in the salat tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, there's a spiritual connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But also in that spiritual connection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why do you do it before dhuhr? As this narrated, it says you do it before dhuhr, slightly before dhuhr, at that moment, because that's the moment when Rasulullah, he gave that sermon, and in that sermon he says that whoever I am his master, Ali is his master. And once you do that salat and you finish it before dhuhr, it is as if you were there, that you get the blessings of having been at the event of Ghadir Khun. You get the blessings as if you were there to make the bay'ah to Amir al-Mu'mineen. As many had said, but unfortunately forgot, Bakhin ya Ali, asbahta amiran lil-mu'mineen alayhum. That congratulations, Ya Ali. Today you've become the master, you've become the leader, the commander of the believers. But of course, we do it today, and we should never forget that moment. We should never forget our commitment to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdhalu salatu wasalam. So in that day is a great deal of spirituality, from the ghusl to the fast to the prayer, to the du'as and to the ziyarat. But as well, we have that connection. As we said, you make that salat, and it's as if you were there to make that bay'ah. You make that salat, or you make that bay'ah, the symbolic bay'ah, and of course, today it is towards the Imam of our time, Imam Zaman Ajil Faraj al-Sharif. With regards to, again, connecting or at least understanding that political posture and position of Ahlul Bayt, especially Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, as he has emphasized the importance of this event. There are two ziyarat that I want to just kind of point out very quickly. Two ziyarat from Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, meaning that these are the two ziyarat that Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, he wrote or he dictated and he gave it to his companions, and mashallah, alhamdulillah, that we received this ziyarah. One of them is called Ziyarat al-Ghadiriyya. Ziyarat al-Ghadiriyya. And this is a ziyarah that Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, that he would go to the grave of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, and he would recite this ziyarah. Very beautiful ziyarah. It would take about an hour to recite it, but very beautiful ziyarah. And that ziyarah, and the second ziyarah is ziyaratul Jami'ah. Ziyaratul Jami'ah Kabira. A ziyarah that you can go to the graves of any of the imams, any of the Aimma alayhim salatu wasalam, and you recite this ziyarah. As one of his companions asked, he says, give me a ziyarah that doesn't make a difference which of the imams I go to, I can recite this ziyarah and it's applicable. So let's first examine this first ziyarah al-Ghadiriyya. And we only have time to just really brush on or touch on some of the points in this ziyarah. And this ziyarah, when you read the ziyarah, subhanallah, the two things that stand out in this ziyarah, one is the tawalla, meaning the commitment to the walayat of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhi wasallam. And particularly Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. And in this ziyarah, again, there's a reference to various verses that indicate the barakah or the fada'il or the greatness of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. So tawalla you gain from this ziyarah, and also tabarra. Subhanallah, the tabarra, and as I mentioned before, that tabarra is not simply just saying that you disagree and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove the barakah from those individuals who disobeyed him when they usurp the right of Amir al-Mu'mineen, when they usurp the right of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wasalam. But that tabarra, the most important aspect of it is that our actions don't align with the actions of those individuals who usurp the rights of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wasalam. This is not simply just a statement that we make, but rather a commitment in our actions in our life. Sallallahu alayhi Muhammad wa Muhammad. In the Ziyarat al-Ghadiriyya, again, this tawalla, as we say, this commitment to the walayat of the Ahlul Bayt, Imam al-Hadi alayhi salatu, and again, he's Imam al-Ma'soom. After he gives the salutations to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he begins to give salutations to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he reaches as well, he says, Mawlaya wa Mawla al-Mu'mineen. Again, Imam Ali, he says that, who is Imam Ali? Who is Ali ibn Abi Talib? Mawlaya, my master. So Imam al-Ma'soom, Imam Ali says, my master is who? Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Again, this is a lesser verse that we think, oh yes, this is the Imam al-Ma'soom, but he says, yes, I have a master. Who is that master? Ali. And of course, if his master is Ali, then his master is who? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Man kuntu mawlahu fahada aliyun mawla. Without doubt. Then it reaches to a point, again, that showing part of the tabarra, and this is a light part of tabarra. He says, أشبهت محنة هارون إذ أمره موسى على قومه وتفرقوا عنه. He says that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, again, that famous hadith that we know, that the Prophet, he says that Amir al-Mu'mineen is like me as Harun was to Musa. But Imam Hadi alayhi salatu, he points out a very critical aspect, or you could say, of similarity. Of course, we understand that similarity, and a lot of times we focus on, yes, when Musa, he went for his meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who was in charge? Musa, Harun. But Imam Hadi alayhi salatu, he says, yes, that's a given, we know that he was in charge. But what happened to the people? Yes, Harun was in charge, but what did the people do? He says, تَفَرَّقُوا عَنْهُ. He says, and this is what happened to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, مَنْ كُنْتُ مَوْلَاهُ فَهَذَا عَلِيٌّ مَوْلَاهُ. But then when the Prophet, he left, what happened? تَفَرَّقُوا عَنْهُ. That they separated from Amir al-Mu'mineen. They took a different path. So this is what Imam al-Hadi alayhi salatu, he is pointing out. And one of the very interesting points, that because this is something that happened during the lifetime of Imam Hadi. Of course, he lived under the rulership of the Abbasid dynasty. And the beginning, and again, if you think about the ideological stance of the Abbasids, in the very beginning, their claim was that, oh, you know what, we're rising up against the Umayyads to restore the power of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu. That's what they raised their banner for. They wore black, and they said, so, you know what, we're going to give, right, because the rightful leaders of this ummah are the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu. And we will rise up in their name and give it back. And this is why you see sometimes in some of the, especially Western historians, they say that that first period of the Abbasids, sometimes they say, oh, they were like Shia or Pseudo Shia, right? At least that was their claim. But that was only lip service. Their intentions were not to restore the power, the authority back to whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had appointed as authority. So you'll see that, oh, well, they are Pseudo Shia, but very early on, again, you see that they turn against the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. And then by the time of Ma'mun, they adopt this position of Mu'tazila. So that becomes like the state-governed Mu'tazila. But then what happens during the lifetime, because they are still constantly oppressing the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu, there are few, I would say, theological positions, for example, between the Mu'tazila and the Shia. So Again, the Mu'tazila does not believe in compulsion, nor do they believe in absolute complete free will. They have an aspect of Amr bin al-Amrayn. So there are some similarities. So this is what the Abbasids, they had adopted. But then by the time, during the imamate of Imam Hadi alayhi salam, during the time of Mutawakkil, what happened? There was a historical shift in there. You could say theological positioning. At this point, they began to now side and raise up what is called an orthodoxy. An orthodoxy which now they're beginning to formulate, or at least kind to limit the different schools of Islamic thought. So Imam Hanbal, he becomes, at one point he was arrested, but now he's open. He's asked to become one of the chief judges. He refuses. So now this is the first moment where we have this idea or sense, and this is during the time of Imam Hadi, of some formulation of what is called a sunnah, orthodoxy. But before that, it didn't exist. But before that point, was there an idea or concept of Shi'atu Aliyan? Yes, absolutely. It was there. The idea on this title, again, this is based on research, that this title, As-Sunnah wa Jama'ah, this didn't come until the end of the 18th century. And this is with the Baraylawi movement, when they begin to rise up. They were known as the As-Sunnah wa Jama'ah. But Shi'atu Aliyin, wa Shi'atu Ali Muhammadin alayhim afsalatu salam, during the lifetime of Imam Mu'mineen was here. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentioned that. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, during his lifetime, in fact, the hadith is from Ibn Abbas, where the Prophet of Allah, he says that, who is coming? Amirul Mu'mineen. And when Ibn Abbas, he saw Imam Ali, the Prophet says, yes, هذا أمير المؤمنين. He says, Ya Rasulullah, هو أمير المؤمنين after you? Rasulullah says, no, هو الآن أمير المؤمنين. Yes, but and when I go, yes, he will have that authority. But this is a title, this is something, as Rasulullah, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he told me to give him this title in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that was also, again, another place that it happened on the day of Ghadir. And this is why that greeting or that congratulations to Imam Ali was Bakhin Bakhin Ya Ali, Asbahta Amir al-Mu'mineen al-Yawm. That today you became Amir al-Mu'mineen. But that title was given before the moment of Ghadir. Before that moment of Ghadir. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So just quickly, we'll go to the second ziyarah that Imam Hadi alayhi salam, that he gave us, again, another very beautiful ziyarah. That if you haven't had a chance to recite the ziyarah to al-Ghadiriyya or ziyarah to Jamia, recite them. Again, when you recite them, it gives you the ma'rifat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salam, especially ziyarah to Jamia. In that ziyarah, or that ziyarah, and from the beginning, it begins, Assalamu alaikum, ya Ahl Bayt al-Nubuwah. Peace and salutations be upon you, O family, household of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ahl Bayt al-Nubuwah. And then it begins to list the titles, or at least the attributes, the qualities of the Ahl Bayt. And this is the two qualities that I want to focus on very quickly. One is Sasat al-Ibad wa Arkan al-Bilad. So Sasat al-Ibad, meaning they are the ones who formulate the politics for, or they formulate the politicking for, the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are the foundation or the cornerstone of the country, of the nation. When we think of politics, as I said, what is it? Politics. So this gives us a beautiful understanding of what politics is, or at least what is the theocracy, or true theocracy, or the religious or spiritual governance of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wassalam, just simply from this idea, Sasat al-Ibad. that they are those who are managing or creating or establishing that which is conducive for the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be in the servitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is the best method? When should justice be applied, for example? When should mercy be applied? All of these things, this is Sasatul Ibad. Sasatul Ibad. Not simply that, again, this is not a theology of lip service. Sasatul Ibad, just so that we can truly understand that. What does it mean that they are the ones who, again, that politics and this understanding is in their hands? One, we look to the Risalat of Hukuk of the Ahlul Bayt, Risalat of Hukuk of Imam Sajjad. One of the aspects of governance, politics, is rights, the rights of people. But before you can even observe the rights of people, what does Imam Sajjad alayhi tell us? What does he start with? Haqqullah. If you cannot observe the haqq and the right of Allah, how do you observe the rights of His creation? So Sasatul Ibad, again, it is not a politics that, oh, hey, simply we have this government and I'm the leader. No, that's politics or politicking of Ahlul Bayt will connect everyone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, look, everything that He has created, every human being, every jinn, everything, angels, that they are what? Ibadullah. Whether they know it or don't know it. And so for a leader, one who is leading on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Is connecting that servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first right that you have to observe is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you observe the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you observe the rights of His creation. And this is the problem that we see, that because no one factors this in, human rights, who's making up these human rights? Are these human rights based on the one who has created the human and knows what's best for the human being, or something that we've kind of concocted? And of course, when we do that, what happens? We classify some people as human. Other people we don't like, no, they're not human. In fact, even a term when you're someone who is an outsider, you say, oh, this person is an alien. He's an alien. That will name him alien. Whereas alien is something that seems strange and but once you observe the haqq of Allah, you're able to observe the haqqun nas, the rights of people. This is Sasatul Ibad. Wa arkanul bilad. This is the cornerstone of the politics of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsadu. Another issue which we find very important to politics and politicking is economics. Economic problems. And always you find these things in a government or in a place that becomes an issue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran as well, in Surah Al-Mutaffifin, chapter 83 of the Quran, in the very beginning. Just read the first 3 verses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ. Again, this is not simply something we think that, and some people think, oh, theocracy is something for then. This applies today. Applies throughout all of times if, again, that politics is not based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. It's not based on that justice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants and that justice that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsadu they came to implement. Woe be upon those who are the defrauders, who shortchange others. What is their business model? They say, oh, well, you know what? When we have to get something, we got to make sure that the scales are perfect. The scales are perfect. We have to get our full amount. When we're buying the commodity from someone, they can't shortchange us. But when we want to sell to them, what do? They are very skimpy on on what they deliver. Why? Because, our profit margins are best. Why do we use sweatshops? Oh, you know what? This is a third world country. You know what? We can get as much labor out of them as we want. Why? Because when we pull that labor out of them, and then what happens? When we sell it here, our profit margin is 1,000 times. So even when we put something on sale, say, hey, you know what? This is on sale. So we're still getting a $500 markup, 500% markup. And the interesting thing, you look this up. Why do we call it sweatshop? You know why you call it a sweatshop? Because the factory was kept so hot that if people drank water, they sweat it out, and they wouldn't have to take a break to go use the restroom. This is why it's called a sweatshop. Look up the definition. Look up why it was called a sweatshop. This is all in order to make the profit margins large. Even now, we have very famous cases on trial now. Again, Boeing. Okay, well, hey, you know what? We'll use cheap doors. We'll cut corners. The doors are flying off the airplane in the air. Why? Because if we spend less, our profit margin is going to be big. We're going to still sell those airplanes at millions and millions of dollars to these airlines, but you know what? We can make it cheaper. We can use old parts, no problem. Make our profit margins big so that we can enjoy ourselves. This is the mutaffifin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He dealt with that in the Quran. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, when he was finally assuming his position, rightful position as the Khalifa, in a moment that he says, look, why are you doing it now? One of the things that he did, one of the first things he did, inshallah, in our natural language class, when it resumes, we'll go over that khutbah. But one of the things he did is that all of the, or several of the misuse of the Baytul Mal, because before him, Uthman is known in history is recording that he gave to his family. Money was misappropriated. One of the things that he did, he reversed all of those mismanagement. He says, even if someone, this is one of the words, he says, even if someone was given a bridal gift, was given as a gift to a bride, the dowry, he says, no, it will be returned. Why? Because it's not the right place. That he exacted justice in this way. That he was reversing the economic injustice that existed. And this is one of the biggest problems we find in the world today, the economic injustice. That, unfortunately, some think that, well, hey, our life is simply in this world. That we have to gain. And so they don't care that some are less fortunate themselves. They don't care that some may not have enough to eat at night. This is not the way of Islam. It's not the path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has outlined for us in the Quran. This is not the path that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that he was establishing in Medina. This is not the path or way of life that he was emphasizing on the day of Ghadir. Man kuntumullahu fahada aliyun mawla. But what was the path? It was a path of justice. And the final aspect of, you could say, governance, which is very important. And again, we see it today. And this is why I'm pointing out. And it's also connected with that last point of economics. And what is that? That is warfare. Warfare. And fighting. When we look at it, what is it for? That one place gains another piece of rock and dirt? That's what it is. Oh, hey, I control this country or that country or this resource. For what? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this for humanity, for mankind. Efficiently for mankind. But because of our greed, what happens? Oh, well, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that, I want this. And we create these wars. When we look at most countries, their weapons, security, their military budget, way greater than their budget to actually help, feed, clothe, take care, health care of their own people. Why is this? Why is this? What is that mentality? That this is how we are living, or this is the direction of our politics, that our military budget is huge, but our budget to feed the poor, why should we have people who are homeless? Let's take care of them. Why do you have people who can barely eat or barely survive? Let's take care of them. But we want to dominate, and we want to take this land, this resource and that resource, and just control everything, which we won't have everything. It's going to be limited. Our lives are short-lived. The best who were at it were the pharaohs and the Caesars. Where are those pharaohs and Caesars? Where are they at? We see their pyramids, but where are they at? How much of that wealth did they actually use or take with them? Where is it at? But this is the mentality. When we look at the politics of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wassalam in this regard, I'll give you just two examples. One example from the life of Imam Sadiq, which I mentioned before, that where one of the individuals who came to Imam Sadiq alayhi afsalatu wassalam, he said that, there are two groups of people they're fighting. They're not Muslim. This guy was a blacksmith. He says, and they want weapons. And they pay good price for weapons. Both groups have come to me. So he asked Imam Sadiq, he says, what should I do? Should I make their weapons and, I'll gain a lot of profit? And it's not these guys who are, it's not that they're not killing Muslims. If they were killing Muslims, then yeah, we can't sell them. But they're fighting amongst themselves. Imam Sadiq alayhi afsalatu wassalam, he says, no. He says, don't make weapons for them. Don't make spears or swords for them. But make things for them that they can protect themselves, because the other group may have some sort of weapons. So no problem. Make for each of them shields. Make for each of them chainmail. Make for each of them helmets. So that if one group has weapons, at least these guys, they can protect themselves from it. But don't make weapons for each one for them to kill each other. And unfortunately, today is opposite. It says, oh, hey, let's make weapons. Oh, now we have to sell these weapons. Let's start a war between two groups of people. Let them fight so we can sell more weapons. The position of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afsalatu wassalam said, no. Not to create discord and disharmony between the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A very beautiful example in the life of Imam Hadi alayhi afsalatu wassalam. Mutawakkil, the life of Mutawakkil. Mutawakkil, he had, again, a large army. Again, because there were different scrimmages, people vying for power. Of course, even at one point, Mutawakkil's son kills him to get power. But during the lifetime of Mutawakkil, he had an army of about 90,000 men. So one day he calls them out. He says, look, go into the desert. He says, dig dirt from a place and make a mount, a very high mount. So you make this mount, he says, and once you make that mount, you go and you stand on one side, you stand with all your weapons drawn. He wanted to intimidate Imam Hadi alayhi afsalatu wassalam. So he went and called Imam Hadi alayhi afsalatu wassalam, and they walked upon this hill, this high hill. And they looked out, and so Mutawakkil, proud, he says, look, he says, this is my army. 90,000 men, all their weapons, spears drawn to show their power. So Imam Hadi alayhi afsalatu wassalam, he says, do you want to see my army? And so Mutawakkil says, what? Oh, I always knew you guys were, he thought, the Ahlul Bayt, they were trying to have an army to overthrow the government. He says, you want to see my army? He says, where's your army? And Imam Hadi alayhi afsalatu wassalam, he looks up, he says, look in the sky, look above your soldiers. And so it said that Mutawakkil, he saw angels, not just in a single row, but they covered the entire sky. These angels, they had spears, they had bow and arrows, they had swords. He says, this is my army. This is my army. He said, Mutawakkil began to tremble. Again, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that what in the Quran, that the Muslims, the mu'mineen, they helped in the battle of Badr. With what? The angels. Imam Hadi says, this is my army. He says, but rest assured. He says our fight is not for this dirt. He says, we don't want this dirt. It's not for that. It's not to gain this power. That is not what is intended. He says, so rest assured that this is not what is wanted. Again, I'll end with this verse of the Quran to show that, again, our politics is our spirituality. Our spirituality is our politics. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "i'dilu huwa aqrabu lit-taqwa." Be just. Apply justice. Establish justice. Why? Because, not because you're trying to get at someone, not because you're trying to overthrow them. "I'dilu," be just, be those who establish justice. Huwa aqrabu lit-taqwa. Why? Because this is close to taqwa Allah. To being God conscious. Because that individual who's God conscious will care for the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doesn't want to destroy the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the believers as well, "Udkhulu fil silmi kaffatan," that all the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should enter into what? Silm, peace, kaffatan, all together. And inshallah, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to guide us, to teach us, to educate us by His Quran and by the Sirat of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhim afro-salatu salam. And on Tuesday, the day of Ghadir, may we truly benefit from that blessing and the barakah of that day, both spiritually and also in our political outlook and vision. May it align with that of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhim afro-salatu salam. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma kulli waliyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala aba'i fi hadhihi as-sa'a wa fi kulli sa'a waliyan wa hafidha wa qa'idan wa nasira wa dalilan wa 'ayna hatta tuskinuhu ardaka taw'a wa tumatti'uhu fiha tawila bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Sheikh. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين علي ولي الله وليا ونعم الولي. أشهد أن مولانا أمير المؤمنين علي وأولادهم معصومين بالحق حجج الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل محمد وآل محمد خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين عليا وأبناه المعصومين حقا حقا حجج الله. حي عن الصلاة حي عن الصلاة حي عن الفلاح حي عن الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. صلاة المغرب. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات صبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا. إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد وإنه لحب الخير لشديد. أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله تعالى وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا. ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله كما هو أهله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله تعالى وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا لطيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار من كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة ومنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وفي معنى الحفلة
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين عليا وأبناه المعصومين حقا حقا حجج الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. صلاة العشاء. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله رب صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله رب صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله تعالى وقوته أقوم وأقول بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربي الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله رب صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله كما هو أهله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله تعالى وقوته أقوم وأقعد سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله رب صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله رب صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله تعالى وقوته أقوم وأقول سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله رب صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا لطيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تسبيحات حضرت زهرا علیه السلام.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لعلم بموضع رزقي وإنما أطلبه بقدرات تخطر على قلبي فأجول في طلبه البلدان فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران لا أدري في سيل هو أم في الجبل أم في الأرض أم في السماء أم في البر أم في البحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيديك وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم صل على محمد وآله واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا ومأخذه قريبا ولا تهنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. وصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو الفضل العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآله. Please say Surah Fatiha for all Mu'minat, especially those who ordered the dinner tonight.
And recite Surah Fatiha for the father of a dear friend of mine who he just passed away today in Iran, Hajaga Mateen Manish. Al-Fatiha ma salawat. وزيارة. السلام عليك يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا صاحب السكينة. السلام عليك أيها المدفون في المدينة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا بضعة رسول الله. السلام عليك يا فاطمة زهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وقرة عين الرسول ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين ويعسوب الدين علي بن أبي طالب ووصي رسول الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم أيها الحسن والحسين سبتي نبي الرحمة وسيدي شباب أهل الجنة أجمعين ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم أئمة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. السلام على علي بن الحسين وعلى محمد بن علي وعلى جعفر بن محمد وعلى موسى بن جعفر وعلى علي بن موسى وعلى محمد بن علي وعلى علي بن محمد الهادي النقي. اللهم صل على علي بن محمد وصي الأوصياء وإمام الأتقياء وخلف أئمة الدين والحجة على الخلائق أجمعين. اللهم كما جعلته نورا يستضيء به المؤمنون فبشر بالجزيل من ثوابك وأنذر بالعليم من عقابك وحذر بأسك وذكر بآياتك وأحل حلالك وحرم حرامك وبين شرائعك وفرائضك وحظ على عبادك وأمر بطاعتك ونهى عن معاصيتك. فصل عليه يا أفضل ما صليت على أحد من أوليائك وذرية أنبيائك يا إله العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي الزكي العسكري. السلام على حجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا معز المؤمنين المستضعفين ومذل الكافرين المستكبرين. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك وانصارك والمستشهدين بين يديك وتحت لوائك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة وموضع الرسالة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.